Hold up, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play the roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bet.
Welcome back, y'all. This is the Double M Podcast. I'm your host, Jesus Dinero. You are my co-host,
Puma Gato.
What do we got going on tonight, my man?
We're talking about another UFC fight card. It's Jamal Hill versus Khalil Rountree. Let's talk about it.
So, we have Khalil Rountree versus Jamal Hill coming up. There's a number of different things that are going to be going on into this fight. Obviously, there's a little bit of back and forth between Jamal Hill and Khalil Rountree, both of them obviously having faced Alex Pereira. Jamal Hill was basically saying, Alex Pereira would never do me like that. Khalil Rountree and fans basically saying, my man, he lasted way longer than you did. He looked better than you did, even though he got beat. So, the number one thing is here, who do we have going on here? Listen, based on the fights that each one of them had against Alex Pereira, you would think, hey, you know what? Khalil Rountree has a good chance at beating Jamal Hill. I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure that's true. And don't get me wrong, I would personally want Khalil Rountree to win this fight just because I think Khalil Rountree just seems like an all-around better dude than does Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill talks way too much shit. And if I'm being honest, it's not even that phenomenal of a fighter. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, just because, again, I do think Jamal Hill is going to win this fight. The reason I say that is because I feel like Jamal Hill does way too much talking, and he doesn't carry that same vigor, that same talking into his fights. Basically, he talks way more than he backs up. Now, listen, that being said, I do personally feel like Jamal Hill is going to win this. Jamal Hill is a heavy puncher. Jamal Hill, when he does land, he can put you out. I do think that based on the durability that we saw Khalil Rountree take up against Alex Pereira, you would say, hey, Khalil Rountree can absolutely take those punches and keep moving forward. That being said, look, man, it was one time Tyson Fury said, listen, when you go up against a heavy fighter like, in his case, Deontay Wilder, those fights take something out of you. So with Khalil Rountree, his fight against Alex Pereira, there's no way that I can't see that took something out of him a little bit. Not to say that Khalil Rountree doesn't have heart. Clearly he does. Not to say that Khalil Rountree doesn't have a chin. Clearly he does. He stood in there for a very long time with one of the heaviest punchers in the game. Number of different reasons. But I think that because of all of the things that I've seen between both of them, I think Khalil Rountree is a good dude as far as being a fighter. He's well-rounded. He can, put some things together. I've just seen better work from Jamal Hill. Now, don't get me wrong. Jamal Hill, and the reason I believe Jamal Hill can probably get the job done is because he has more experience than does a Khalil Rountree in the sense of he's faced better competition. Yes, they've both faced Alex Pereira, but Jamal Hill's also faced people like Yuri Prochazka and so on. So he has a lot of good work with a lot of different individuals, a lot of different styles. And even though he lost his fight to Yuri Prochazka, you never leave those fights without learning something, or at least hopefully learning something. That being said, I think Jamal Hill punches hard enough, and especially if it's early, it lands enough to where he can make the fight good for himself. I think if it goes anything past the third round, it's going to start to favor Khalil Rountree more. I think Khalil Rountree has enough stamina, has enough durability to where he can definitely keep it interesting. And fuck, man, if it goes past the third round, maybe even win. I just, at this particular juncture, I'm favoring Jamal Hill. I've seen him when he's fully focused. He puts good combinations together. He lands effectively. He lands heavy blows. And I think that's the number of things that, if you put together, Jamal Hill can pull it off. So I'm favoring Jamal Hill as of right now. In fact, that's going to be my pick. I don't mind at all if I'm wrong. I'd be happy if I'm wrong because I personally like Khalil Rountree better. In fact, I hope Khalil Rountree does win. I think, again, he just seems like an overall good dude. He doesn't make any excuses. When he lost the fight, he said, hey, look, I lost. Thank you for being behind me, blah, blah, blah. That's what I would like to see Jamal Hill do. Not this whole, this is the reason I lost and this is the reason and this and that, like excuse after excuse. That's one of the reasons I don't like Jamal Hill, even though I am picking him for this fight. So I'd like to see Khalil Rountree come out of this a winner, but based on the combinations that I've seen him put together, based on the heavy blows that I've seen him put together, based on the better competition that he's faced, I'm going to favor Jamal Hill in this one. What do you think about that, my man?
I definitely think between the two, I personally would be favoring a Khalil Rountree match. Now, don't get me wrong. Let me point out my reasoning for this. So personally, I do think that you definitely have major points right about Jamal Hill definitely facing a lot more tougher competition and therefore having more experience as such a Khalil Rountree. But unfortunately, I do think for Jamal Hill with the numerous injuries he's had, because I'm pretty sure this is actually the third time that they actually got in a Khalil Rountree program. Started both times they had to cancel due to injury on Jamal Hill's side. I think he even had one more fight before they tried to get Khalil Rountree set up that they had to cancel that for. The damage that he's faced as a result of Alex Pereira and Jerry Prohaska, I think it's one of those times where, yes, you faced high-level competition, champion-level competition, in facing Glover Teixeira, which he went against, Alex Pereira, which again was a champion, and Jerry Prohaska, who was a former champion before Jamal Hill. I do think, unfortunately, it's going to be a dented iron situation with Jamal Hill, which is why I'm personally favoring Khalil Rountree. I will, however, say Khalil Rountree, at the very least, since we're using the Alex Pereira fight, is definitely a good litmus test for that. A good benchmark, I should say. I do think Khalil Rountree has one glaring problem that I think was actually highlighted in that fight. And that's, again, after the third round. I think that's when Khalil Rountree's gas tank was depleted pretty heavily. Can't remember the exact scenario for what caused that in that fight. I couldn't exactly remember. I think I remember him almost getting down in the fourth round. And in the fifth round, when he was facing that barrage from Alex Pereira, he tried to throw some wild punches out there, and they just didn't land because he had, by his own admission, his own gas tank was basically depleted, and said, I could throw theoretically, but even if they hit, they weren't really going to have enough muster to put Alex Pereira down. So I legit had no answer, which is why the referee had to call it, because Khalil Rountree didn't have an answer for Alex Pereira's barrages. I mean, he was physically there in the fight, but he legit had nothing left to throw out.
Ended in the fourth round.
Ended in the fourth round. Thank you. So him facing that barrage like that, I do think after the third round, his gas tank was definitely depleted to that point. So I do think that is a heavy dent, at least in Khalil Rountree's corner, where I think at some point after the third round, his gas tank just completely goes out on him, and at that point, he's got no answer. So I am going to favor Khalil Rountree only because Jamal Hill, again, has a little bit more of a dented iron problem than a Khalil Rountree does. I do think, at the very least for me, Khalil Rountree has more of a heart of a fighter in him than so does Jamal Hill. Not to say that Jamal Hill doesn't have any at all, but just Khalil Rountree just sort of edges it out, at least from where I'm standing. I will, however, say if both of these men come out of the third round, I will say it's going to edge definitely a lot more in Jamal Hill's favor for this fight. If it's by Khalil Rountree, I'm going to say TKO before the second, best case scenario. After that, I'm going to say Jamal Hill. I'll even go Jamal Hill TKO in the fourth, personally.
Yeah, man, I don't think Khalil Rountree carries that type of power. But listen, you never know. You never know. Maybe that will happen. I'd be surprised, especially in the later rounds, because Khalil Rountree, like you said, was clearly gassing out in the third round. So I don't know how you'd get a knockout in the fourth. But listen, man, anything's possible. Again, these dudes do put in that heavy work. They do throw in them heavy punches. So definitely a possibility. It'll be interesting to see, man. Again, I personally am favoring Jamal Hill, but I would not at all be mad if Khalil Rountree won. In fact, I kind of hope Khalil Rountree does win. But listen, it'll be an interesting fight. Again, these two have had a war of words, mostly because, Jamal Hill thinks that he did better than Khalil Rountree. Not sure how he thinks that, but it is what it is, man. We'll see what happens moving forward. It's going to be an interesting fight for sure. And may the best man win. May the best man win. And with that, make sure to like, comment, hate, subscribe, DM us about the bullshit, and
get rest and stay blessed. We'll see you in the next one.